Welcome to the Rundown. My name is Ryan.
My name is Ray.
Ray, how you been this past week?
Still recovering from that terrible Super Bowl. It's been a weird week not having a lot of football to discuss. We do have some
Mhm.
news that we're going to get into. All-Star weekend for the NBA just finished, so we'll definitely get into a little bit of that. We got spring training. Seems like the players have started reporting, so I am so geeked about that. Too excited for baseball to be back. So yeah, we're turning the corner now. Not as much football, but definitely a lot of basketball. We're getting to the heart of the season now, and then beginning of baseball is here. So we got some good things to look forward to.
Just want to also say shout out to anybody else who's watching the Olympics because that has taken over my whole life. And now I'm convinced that not only could I be a judge for several sports, but I think I could actually participate in a few winter sports, like the luge. I think the luge would be my jam because I'm laying down. And like, I know you got to do work, but like, I feel like I could rock that well.
I think I endorse you as the CEO of laying down. You do own that business very well.
I love a good relaxation. This is only like literally like a minute and a half, if that, and then you're done. It's very, some of these events are crazy. And we've already seen a lot of news that has come out of the Olympics. Apologies to Lindsey Vaughn. I feel so bad for her. She had to get airlifted, which I saw happen, which was crazy. So she's having surgery, and I don't know if she's going to come back because I think the next Olympics she'd be, I think, 44. So I'm not sure
Yeah, I
if
think
she's coming back, but
she's 41 now, I think is what I saw.
that's
And
yeah.
was it her Achilles or her ACL that she
No, I
just was
think she had had some issues with her ACL. I think it was either torn or partially torn or something, and she was still gonna compete. She was like, "I don't even care," which, by the way, made every
incredible.
and it made almost any man in any other sport look like a complete pansy. I gotta tell you,
Incredible.
she just and then I think what happened was I think she broke her leg.
It was
Um,
nasty.
it was a
The
really
fall
nasty
itself
fall.
was really, really bad. She was going pretty fast, and it looked like her ski clipped one of the flag posts
Mhm.
is
Yep.
what it was.
She hit one of the flag posts and it was bad. I mean, you could see it like that's a weird course because like everybody's waiting at the bottom, so there aren't really fans that are at the side. But the announcers, the people who were calling the race it was really, really tough. Really tough.
And these sports, though, that is tough. I'm surprised that, especially in some of these winter sports, I don't see more of that. And I know these athletes are professionals. So
Mhm.
it's not that I'm surprised that people don't mess up as much, but there's just such a small room for error
Mhm.
when it comes
Mhm.
to a lot of especially these winter sports. So prayers up to Lindsey Vaughn, fast
Yep.
recovery, hopefully for her. But I think realistically, we may have just seen her last appearance in the Olympics.
Yeah. She suffered a complex tibial fracture in the crash and she's had 4 surgeries while
Wow.
in Milan. So, listen, I think what's so hard to watch about the Olympics, which also makes it so great, but what's so difficult about it is you might have like qualifying runs to make sure that you can, compete in the specific event that you're in. But we're talking in some things, it's 1.5 minutes, if that. That's your whole everything you've been training for is like a minute and a half. And to just see what some of these athletes go through is crazy. So, like for instance, figure skating. All week I had heard about this guy, like the quad god, Ilya Malinin, who's doing things in the sport that like people have never heard of. Like he does like a quad axle, which is somebody nobody's done in any competition in the Olympics for figure skating for men. And you saw him, he went into the free skate, he was top dog. He even had room for error, and then he fell apart on the ice. I've never
Really? I
seen
didn't hear about
anything like it.
this.
My god. Okay, so
Now, when you
first
say he fell apart, what do you mean exactly?
so the first jump, fine, no problem, quad, I wanna say Lutz, like I know what I'm talking about, some kind of
Okay.
quad jump. So
Okay.
he did a quad, some type of quad, fine, lands it perfectly, no problems. He goes in the second move was what everybody was waiting for because that was supposed to be the quad axle. He goes into it, he doesn't do it. But not only does he not do it, he only does a single axle. So he went from maybe getting potentially like 15 points to 1.
Wow.
Still has time to make up for it. He's got a whole program. He can do up to 7 quads in a program because that's how many jumps I think you're allowed to do. Could do it. He he completes a couple jumps, doesn't complete a few more, like falls on the ice, like you're just watching a person having a meltdown.
Now, was this guy
And
American?
mhm, 21 years old. Immense pressure. So not only does he not he places 8th. 8th.
Out of how many participants?
I think at that point we were up to 16,
Wow.
maybe 20.
Was he favorited going into this?
He was absolutely favored to win the gold. He had already won gold in the team competition that they did because I guess at that which I don't know when they introduced team figure skating competitions, but the way that it goes is like you have male figure skater, female figure skater, the ice dancing pair, and then the actual figures, the pair, like figure skating pairs. And so all like 4 of those groups will compete as a team. So it's just totaling up the best scores. And we ended up beating out Japan, who got second. And, Ilya's number 1 going into the free skate. He's got I don't know what the point differential was, but it was a pretty decent point differential between him and the next person who was from Yuma, who was from Japan. And then the whole routine fell apart. And no one could believe it. Like the people who were calling, like Tara Lipinski, Terry Gannon, and Johnny Weir were like, they had no idea what to say. It was like everyone had just kind of like witnessed someone's fall. And so as a result of this, not only did he place 8th, but the person who won the gold medal was from Kazakhstan.
I didn't even realize their country was represented in the Olympics.
I
No disrespect to Kazakhstan, but you just don't hear of
No
them
disrespect,
winning
but you're watching what's crazy, so that
medals.
kid is also 21. So, you realize after, like, a couple people go, because like, I think I don't quite know how they determine the order. I think it's more of, like, how you've placed in the competition kind of, like, informs your order moving forward. So he had done, like, fairly well. I mean, everybody was impressed with him. Nobody, I think, expected for him to medal, but, as you're watching and other people aren't skating so well, he skates lights out. He was great. He was absolutely phenomenal. And so as this is happening, you see him at one point realize not only did he skate his personal best, but he's gonna get a bronze. This kid is ecstatic. He's so excited just to medal, just to be there. And then you slowly start to see him realize that he's gonna get the gold medal, and it's not computing to him at all. Like, he's not registering that he's gonna win this gold medal. And Ilya, to his credit, you can see he's frustrated on the ice. He comes over,
Mhm, mhm.
he gives this kid a hug. He's like, "Congratulations." They talked to him right after it happened, which I was like, "Where is his publicist, agent, somebody? He should not be talking to press as soon as this is done. Like, give him a second. Like, give him a moment here." But it was so crazy to watch this kid from Kazakhstan win a gold medal. And honestly, that's how like a lot of the Olympics has been is just like you can have a person from a really random country either participating or finishing a race. Like in cross country skiing, we had our first athlete from Haiti
Wow,
who
big up Haiti.
big up Haiti participated, which was great. We had the Brazil won their first Winter Olympic medal, which is, I think, the first South American medal ever in the Winter Olympics. So,
Wow.
like, kudos to all these like programs that are really kind of coming into their own. And I think that's what's so great about the Olympics is just like you get to see all these different people from all these different places, really just try their best. And when their best is rewarded in that sense, it's great. It's just so nice. But I will say, I I don't think the US men's hockey team stands a chance against Canada. It's like the way
Canada's known for hockey. They should be the favorites here.
but Ray, I don't think people quite are grasping this. Sidney Crosby, who's regarded as one of the great players in the NHL, he's on the 3rd line, Ray. The 3rd.
See, I'm not an NHL guy, but I know the name Sidney Crosby pretty well. he's one of the best players in the league, right? But he's a little bit older now, isn't he?
He is, but when you have one of the best players in the league on the 3rd line of your country's team is stacked.
Well, listen,
Absolutely stacked.
The US had Jason Tatum. The NBA, the American basketball team had Jason Tatum sitting on the bench.
That
Yeah,
was
the U
crazy.
some
What was
teams
that
do
even
know a little something
about? That
about
was
stacking
bananas.
talent. Yeah,
That was
according to
crazy.
Steve Kerr, there just were not enough minutes to play all the players that the US team had. So
I don't
that's a Steve Kerr thing. I think Jason Tatum is still trying to
I don't believe
redeem
that that's
himself
true,
after
but
that.
okay. I don't believe that.
Knowing Steve Kerr and seeing how this Jonathan Kuminga thing just played out, yeah, this probably is somewhat more of an underlying story to it.
But you know what I think is crazy is to see, and we'll get into this when we talk about the NBA too, but, for summer Olympic sports, especially when you're talking about basketball, the US had such dominance for such a long time, but it's interesting to see other countries, be like, "No, it's not a given anymore that you're gonna take it because we've got a lot of other people from a lot of different places that are, making waves for sure." So, but we'll get into that when
I
we hit
saw
the NBA.
I saw a final note on that. I saw a final stat the other day. I think it said that the last American MVP for the NBA was James Harden, and I believe that was back in
Really?
2018. But if you think about it, it's been Jokic a bunch. It's been
Yep.
Giannis a couple times. It was SGA last year, who's Canadian. So, yeah,
Wow.
the European players and now even some Canadian players are it's not an only Americanized sport anymore. It really is a global sport now.
I was joking with my stepdad because I said, "What do you get if you remove Americans from hockey?" And he goes, "What?" And I said, "Hockey doesn't change." It's not like that for all other sports, but it was definitely like
I actually
hockey
like
that
that.
doesn't
I like
change
that.
at all. But quick, I know obviously, as you said before, with football being over, it won't be something that we touch on as much, but I think something worth noting, Tyreek Hill, no longer a Miami Dolphin.
Tyreek Hill, in my opinion, should have never went to the Dolphins in the first place. So,
Yeah, I think he probably should have stayed as well with
but he
the
wanted his
Chiefs.
money, which yeah, I mean, he wanted his money. I can understand that, and I can respect that about him. The Chiefs at the time were not willing to pay him the dollars that he thought he deserved, and to his credit, he was one of the best wide receivers in the league that year. Some might argue he was the best wide receiver at that time when him and the Chiefs couldn't come to an agreement on contract negotiations. But ultimately, he wanted out. The Chiefs didn't wanna pay him what he thought he was worth, so they traded him to Miami, and Miami ended up offering Tyreek Hill an extension. I believe it was a 4 or 5-year extension at the time, which made him, at that time, the highest paid wide receiver in the league, which is what he wanted.
Mhm.
But you leave Patrick Mahomes, and I haven't seen the Miami Dolphins do much since Tyreek Hill has been on that team.
Yeah, I mean, they've
And
gone to the
not all that is his
playoffs, but
fault. Yeah, they've
yeah.
been in the playoffs, and a lot of that, is not his fault. It largely is in part because 1, Tua is not the quarterback that Tyreek Hill thought he
Nope.
was, and secondly, Tua can't stay on the field. Okay, he's healthy, he's hurt constantly. Seems like he's in concussion protocol twice every season. So, this seems like this was a separation
Yeah,
kinda waiting to happen, and it certainly didn't help Tyreek Hill at all that he tore his ACL in 2025.
yeah. Well, I think what's interesting too is that not only was it Tyreek Hill, but they also released a pro linebacker, Bradley Chubb, offensive lineman James Daniels, and wide receiver Nick Westbrookline?
Actually not familiar with that name.
Neither am I. But it looks like, I mean, what I can deduce from that is they are cleaning house.
They're going
So
for a reset, yeah.
they are. They're going for a full reset, so we'll have to see what that means, I think, down the line, but I'm not surprised. I mean, they've got a new coach, a new GM. I mean, they're ready to make some changes. I think Tua will see him gone as well, but the problem with cutting him is that I think he's owed something like $54 million this year in guaranteed money. So if you cut him, you're dealing with a lot of dead cap space. So, I think they're gonna try to trade him, but I don't know how many people are gonna wanna trade for Tua Tagovailoa. to be quite honest.
The last 5 years, Dolphins 9-8, 9-8, 11-6, 8-9, 7-10. I really don't know what they saw in Tua to give him the money that they did. They haven't won more than 11 games in over 10 seasons. So maybe they thought they could catch lightning in a bottle with Tua. He did have one really good year with Hill and Waddle both healthy. They had a really good offense that season, but outside of that, Tua has not moved the needle enough for that team. So now the next question that we have is where does Tyreek Hill go from here? I know where I would like him to go. Okay, so there's a couple places that I would like him to go. I would obviously like him to go back to Kansas City. I thought that him and Mahomes were a great duo, and right now Mahomes needs some help on the offensive side of the ball. He doesn't really have anybody reliable to throw the ball to. The amount of drop passes we've seen the last 2 seasons, 3 seasons, so been off the charts for them. So one, we gotta hope that Mahomes comes back healthy, and the same with Tyreek Hill. But the other team, Ryan, that I'm interested to see him go to is the Bills. I
Mm,
like the
mhm.
idea of a Josh Allen and Tyreek Hill tandem. What do you think about that?
I mean, I don't think it's bad. I mean, I think you just have to Tyreek has a lot of off-field distractions. I think of him as a very distracted player. So, it kind of just depends on if he's willing to kind of put some of those distractions at bay and focus on football. And I think he might be at the time in his career where he does wanna do that. I think he kind of knows that time is limited, I guess, should we say. So, I could see him doing well with Josh. I mean, it kind of all depends. I honestly think he's probably gonna go back to Kansas City, if I'm being honest. I think they're gonna bring him back, or they're gonna try, I think.
Which version of him we will see, that remains to be seen. It says that he was looking to come back at the beginning of the 2026 season. So he's looking to
Mhm.
play a majority of this upcoming season. Is that realistic given his injury from only less than a year ago still at this point? We don't know that yet. But if Tyreek Hill could find the form that he had the last few seasons, 2022, 2023, he had over 1,700 receiving yards both of those years with almost 120 receptions each of those years. So if he can recapture a little bit of that, then he's definitely going to be a huge addition to whatever team he decides to go to.
Just as a quick note, Tua Tagovailoa was a part of the 2020 draft class. Other QBs in that draft class were Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Jordan Love, and Jalen Hurts.
And I think it's safe to say that of
Yep.
those five, Tua is the
He's definitely
least.
down at the lower. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no,
He was
absolutely.
chosen 5th overall. Herbert was chosen 6th. Love was chosen 26th. And Jalen Hurts 53rd.
Wow.
3rd. Obviously, Joe Burrow going number 1. But yeah, Tua, I think people had a lot of hope for him. And then all that concussion stuff and just did not go his way for sure.
I will say in the Dolphins defense, I don't think if you draft, would you say Jalen Hurts was drafted what?
3rd. Well, they were
53rd? So
they were
let's
both
say
oh, go ahead.
let's say they draft Jalen Hurts into a spot. Do we think Jalen Hurts does any better with the Dolphins team than Tua has?
Well, you know what's really crazy about the 2 of them is that Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa played for Alabama at the same time.
They did.
So
They
they have a
did.
really weird, I don't wanna call it a rivalry because I don't know if either of them would classify it as one. Maybe not anymore, I think enough time has passed, but, like, that's a really weird situation. And I think that, you know listen, sometimes people get those head injuries and there's just no stopping it. Football's a dangerous sport, and I think that, Tua I mean, part of me is a little shocked he hasn't retired yet. Because I think if I had had that many injuries or a loved one had had that many injuries, I just would have looked at them and said, "Please stop," because,
Yeah, I'm
it's just
sure
so
that
bad.
family has said that to him. I'm sure that friends have probably said that
Yeah.
to him, people that are really close to him, but you gotta understand how much pride these men have, especially you work your entire life for something so hard to achieve something as impressive as being a starting quarterback in the National Football League, something that you've dreamed about since you were a child. You finally achieved this. It's very hard, even with these injuries, I'm sure, for some of these players to look at the totality of their career and think that stepping away might be a better option for them. So, I was also of the mindset that Tua might need to decide to step away from the game, but I'm not gonna come down too hard on these players that find it hard to make that decision because it probably is a very, very hard thing to do.
Well, at least put on the big helmet.
Oh, those things are so ugly. I
If it's
hate
gonna
them
save
so
your life,
much.
do it. They should
They're
all be
so
wearing them. As
ugly.
far as I'm concerned, they should all be wearing them. So, I know people don't like them. I know they don't think they look cool, but, like, if it's gonna give you a few more years playing the sport that you love so much, wear the big helmet. Mic drop. End of the sentence, period. Just fucking do it.
I'm not getting on the helmet train.
Alright,
But
okay.
lastly, before we transition, really quick, just a few hours ago, did you see that the Browns hired a new DC to replace Jim
I
Schwartz?
did. I did. The Falcons. Yeah, that's where he came from, yeah?
Yeah, he came from the Falcons. He was their pass game coordinator. So his
This
name,
is gonna be a weird year.
Mike Ruttenberg.
That
I
sounds
will admit,
racist. I'm just gonna
I
say.
had not. God, let's hope not, because he better treat Shador
I'm
good. I mean,
cutting
he
that
is the
out of it.
DC,
I'm
but
just saying that for you, but I'm not gonna keep that in, but it does sound racist.
oh Jesus.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I listen, I feel like this is the year where we're seeing a lot of interesting things happen and, you know, put a put up or shut up, I guess, at this point. Like, let's see what everybody's got, hopefully it it brings the Browns something. I mean, Jim Schwartz, though, was an excellent DC, and they royally
Excellent.
fucked that up. So
Excellent.
we'll have to see. I wonder where he's gonna go.
So, something interesting that I actually read today about that, he's likely going to take the year off because he still has a year in his contract, which means if he were to get offered a DC position elsewhere, the Browns have a right to deny him that job
Mm,
actually because of the
mhm.
contract. So, he's likely not gonna be seen anywhere this year, but yeah, this guy, Mike Ruttenberg, he has pretty big shoes to fill because we all know that one issue that this Browns team has not had is their defense.
Mhm,
And that
mhm.
in large part was due to Jim Schwartz. So let's see what Mike Ruttenberg does. Let's see what Todd Monken can do. But we got some new names in there. One thing that does make me feel a little bit better about Ruttenberg is that he has had some time with Robert Saleh,
Mhm.
who we know was a defensive coach for the 49ers last year, last few seasons now. The 49ers defense, it was kinda middle of the pack. They were 13th in points allowed last season. So, I mean, top half of the league, that does make me feel a little bit better. But, yeah, hopefully he brings some tenacity to the Browns. So keeps it there because like we said,
Mhm.
Jim Schwartz had that defense raring to go every week. So, let's see how he does.
All right. Moving on to the NBA. All-Star Weekend happened this weekend. We have more thoughts that we'll get into with that with Farrah Fowle, but overall, how'd you feel about it?
So, I was pleasantly surprised, Ryan. I was.
That sounded high-pitched. Are you lying?
No, I'm not, but I it was high pitched because I feel like you're not gonna agree with me. So I'm just kind of preparing myself. But no, honestly, so the format was a little bit weird, I will say. It was odd getting used to that, but I understood the goal and I understood the vision at the end of it. So they do need to tweak the format a little bit because by the end of the fourth game, there were four games played. Each game was a 12-minute quarter. But by the end of that fourth game, Team USA, the Stripes team, I believed, which had a bunch of the OGs of the NBA. I'm talking Bron, Kawhi, KD. It had a lot of the players that have been in the league for some time. But by the end of that fourth game, because of the format, that team had played 3 consecutive games without a break.
Well,
And
yeah.
the score reflected that. The first 3 games were insanely close and insanely entertaining. But that last game, Team USA, the stars, the younger guys, yeah, they definitely ran away with it.
Cards on the table. I turned it off after the first game. I was not impressed, and I was quite
That
bored.
was one of the best games.
I
That was
know.
one of the best games.
It didn't feel like anybody was that into it. So, except for, like, Wemby.
How could you watch that? Yeah, how could you watch that and not feel like but what about Ant on the other
Well,
from Team
yeah, but,
USA?
like,
Ant was
I
very
mean,
into it.
shockingly, I was rooting for Team World, and we all know how I don't like Jokic, so I don't even know why that was a thing for me, but I was, and I just felt like nobody was really in it to win it. I don't know, I just felt very bored by the whole thing, but here was my question to you, because I don't wanna I have a judgment about this, but because I didn't watch the whole thing, I may need to slow my roll. The US had 2 teams. They had the Stars and the Stripes, correct?
That's right.
But it was just Team World, right? There were no 2 world teams. Yeah?
There was not 2 world teams.
So how is that fair to them? They gotta play the whole time.
I'm not sure what would have happened. So they lost the first game in OT, I might add. That game finished tied at the end of the first 12 minutes, so they had to play
Shockingly, Carl
an
Anthony
extra game.
Cat
What was that?
actually played fairly well, I thought. He was hitting some threes. Cat,
Cat hit
I
some
was
threes, he
surprised.
came out strong. Like I said, Anthony
Mhm,
Edwards hit some big shots because Team
mhm.
World was actually in position to win that first
They
game.
really were, yeah.
And the Stars actually came back towards the end of it, and what I actually loved, at the end of that game, or at the end of regulation, there was a 3 that was hit, I believe Anthony Edwards hit it, but there was a miscommunication on defense, and Wemby was heated afterwards. Wemby was
Mhm.
pissed off that the world team missed a defensive assignment there. But that first game,
Yeah,
it went to overtime, and it was, I believe, played the first team to score 5 automatically wins.
which
And then
I rolled my eyes at that, but yeah.
the
I just thought
second
that was so
game
weird.
The second game, De'Aaron Fox hits a 3 at the buzzer as time expires to give Team USA, the Stripes team, the win over that. They were down by 1. He hits a 3 at the buzzer to win that game. And then the third game was a three-point game as well. That game was decided by 3 points, and Kawhi Leonard went off in that game. He played all 12 minutes of that third game, and he had 31 points, 11 of 13 from the field, 6 of 7 for 3. And the last 3 he hit was with 3 seconds left in that game to give that their Team USA Stripes a 48-45 win. That game was electric, and Kawhi put on a show in that game. And then, like I said, that last game, the Team USA Stripes, they just burned out. They lost that game by over 20 points. And Kawhi Leonard, who had just went off the previous game, he went 0 for 4 in that game.
Mm.
LeBron was unremarkable. Jaylen Brown, what the hell was he doing? He shot 2 for 10
Ugh.
in that last game. How about you pass the ball a little bit? Kevin
He was
Durant
thinking
0
about
for
the real
4.
season.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. So Kawhi, LeBron, KD, yeah, a lot of these guys have been in the league a long time. I think they were just burned out towards the end. But the first 3 games were so competitive. And I was a little disappointed by the ending. But I think if they can just tweak that just a little bit and also tweak it, I agree with you. Find some way that maybe there's not 2 USA teams and only
Mhm,
1 world
mhm.
team. 'Cause you're not gonna tell me that there's not enough all-stars to have 2 world teams. There are. There
Yeah,
definitely are.
that to me seemed like the most off. Like, I was just like, why is there only 1 world team? I don't know. I What it was missing for me in that first game was, like, and because this is modeled, I believe, after the NHL Four Nation Face-Off, which and even that, I would say, in a sense, is different because even when you're doing something like that, that Four Nation, you are tied to your country. It's your countrymen that are doing it with you. Team World is a hodgepodge of different places. So I think you don't necessarily have that unity of team, which I think you do have in the NHL. And obviously, for a variety of reasons, they can't do that because, they don't have 5 people from Serbia playing in the
Right.
NBA or Slovenia or Greece or I mean, maybe they could do Canada. I I don't even know. What is it? Murray and SGA? Who else is from Canada? I don't even know.
Dylan Brooks?
Dylan Brooks?
I believe RJ Barrett is Canadian,
Okay.
or
Maybe you could
does
do
he just play in
Canada.
Toronto? I don't know.
Well, it's a fine line. So, like, I don't, so I think that makes it difficult, but I do applaud the NBA at trying something new. And that theme song for that was catchy and in my head for days. Because it also played during the Olympics. Because the Olympics and that were played on the same
Are you talking
network.
about the Four Nations, theme
No, no,
song?
no, I was talking about the, Team World versus Team US.
Oh,
NBA.
okay, okay,
They did
okay.
a
Yeah.
parody of Tears for Fears, Everybody Wants to Rule the World, and it was
Yes.
like so they were saying all the names.
Yes.
I loved
Hey,
it. It
I
was
know
so
which one you're talking
catchy.
about. Yeah,
How
it's
they
so
did
good.
Wembanyama's name was cool too. I was like, "Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
nice." So then I was just, like, grooving to that. I think I even put it on my story because I was like, "This is in my head for days." And I may never sing the real version of that song again. So, way to go, NBA, I guess,
Good
for
marketing, good
that.
marketing.
Good marketing.
But I think the first game started off a little slow. It was sloppy too. I remember it
Mhm.
being a little disjointed with a lot of the possessions there, but a lot of that is players are not familiar with playing with each other. They don't really know
True.
where each other
True.
wants the ball as well. But as the game progressed, and I think this is just natural for any game, even if it's a regular season game or playoff game, the game got more intense as
Mhm.
time
Mhm.
waned down. I think a lot like you, a lot of people just saw the effort like the first 6 minutes and was like, okay, this is the same bullshit that we're used to.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
from there on out, each game
Okay.
actually was very competitive. I was pretty impressed.
Alright, well, I guess I should have kept it on longer. So, that one's on me. You know who had to answer a lot of speculation during this whole time was, LeBron continued to be asked
Ron
about
gone.
retirement rumors. What do we think is happening there? I wish he would just Matthew Stafford this shit and just say what he was thinking.
I think LeBron wants a retirement tour. This is
Ugh.
obviously only speculation. None of us can truly know what LeBron wants, but if we look at his body of work, his career, if we look at the decision which aired on national television, his decision to go from Cleveland to Miami. If we look at just some of the circumstances of LeBron's career, he likes the spotlight. He likes attention.
He does.
And I don't think he wants to leave the game after the season without fans giving him his flowers in each arena as they should, without teams showing appreciation for what he's done for the league. So my guess is this will not be his final season. There's been a lot of speculation floated that maybe he leaves the Lakers this offseason and plays one final season in Cleveland. Tells everybody before the season so that they know as he plays each game next year that'll be his last one. And I feel like that's a pretty realistic way to go out. And I would actually like that for him. He brought Cleveland a championship, and it was a huge
Mhm.
championship, just the way it happened, everything coming back from down 3-1 to beat the 73-9 Warriors team. I think I just shed a little tear as I said that. But the I mean, he means so much to that city. I definitely think it would be a really good look for him and for that city if he could go back for one final season and end his career that way.
Well, I just hope that we get a very definitive answer when there is one. I think the thing that I worry the most about is decline because I think we're at the point now where we're going to start to really see that decline. I hope next year is the last year. I think it needs to be done.
And let me just tell you a little something. With James Harden now going to Cleveland, playing
Mhm.
alongside Donovan Mitchell, what if LeBron does decide to go back to Cleveland for one final year? Are you gonna tell me that the Cleveland Cavaliers are instantly one of the 2 best teams in the East with Donovan Mitchell alongside James Harden and LeBron James, who no longer has to be the first or maybe even the second best player
Mhm.
on his team? If he can go back to Cleveland and they get those 3 healthy and together for a full season, LeBron with a chance to retire, get his 5th ring, get more than Steph, match Magic Johnson, James Harden with a chance to get his first championship of his career, that could be a very, very, very interesting storyline.
I'm going to say this and I said it about Chris Paul, who we'll talk about a little later. Uh and I'm saying it about James Harden. He's never going to win a ring. Never.
I
He's
don't
just going
see
to
it
be one of those
happening
guys
with
that
the
didn't get
Cleveland
it.
Cavaliers. I don't see it happening with this team. I think the Knicks are better than them currently.
No.
I I know Detroit
Oh yeah,
is
well,
better than
yeah.
every team in the East. I mean, we've seen what Detroit has done all season, and they beat those same Knicks by 40 just a couple of weeks ago. So as it stands right now, no, I don't think the Cavs have enough to do what it takes to even get to the finals. And then when they get to the finals, I don't think they're better than the top teams in the West. We're talking
Hey,
the Nuggets, the Thunder. So no. But if LeBron goes there, Ryan, I don't know.
well, I could tell you who's number 2 in the Eastern Conference right now.
That would be the Boston Celtics, your
My
Boston
Boston
Celtics.
Celtics. I'm proud of them. I really am. I think we've really come alive this season. I'm very proud of us. I don't know if we'll go all the way, but we're putting up a fight. I'm digging it. Brown's performance in the All-Star game should not be a reflection
Left
on
left a
this
lot to be
actual
desired.
season.
Not
But
indicative of the season he's having, people.
it's not, certainly
Because he
not.
is having, I would say, he's in the top 3 for the MVP conversation right now.
Ugh, so proud of him.
I'm
So
extremely proud
proud
of
of
him.
my Celtics. You know, as long as we can just beat the Knicks, I've got 0 problems with how the rest of the season
Well,
turns
they
out.
did not do that on Super Bowl Sunday, so the next time I see them play, I wanna see the Celtics bounce back in a big way
We will.
because
We will.
they
Well, I know. But you know what? We're gonna yeah, listen, we're gonna put up a fight. We're getting to the time now where we've gotta start really putting the pedal to the metal and people gotta start coming alive because, you know, I mean, there is still a lot of season left to play, but not a lot of season left to play if you think about it.
Yeah, a lot of people say typically that the All-Star game is like the halfway break for the NBA. I mean, it's
Mhm.
like in a sense, right? Because that's kind of where we halt and take a breath, turn the page to the latter half. But if you think about it, I'm looking at the Pistons, number 1 in the East. They played 53 games already. So we're
Mhm.
actually more than halfway through the season. We got 82 games in a full season. All the teams mostly only have around 30 games left. And one team that I from game to game, like we just touched on them, the Knicks. We gave them their props last week on the pod. I did note that they got spanked by the Pistons by 40. Okay, it did happen, but I spoke the truth. OG Anunoby missed that game. Carl Anthony Towns missed that game. And then they came back and beat the Celtics on Super Bowl Sunday convincingly. So I was really impressed by that.
Mhm.
But then they follow up an impressive win against Boston and lose to the Pacers? It makes no sense, and I don't know if there's still remnants of what Tyrese Halliburton did to them last year and that
PTSD.
epic playoff run, and they might have a little bit of PTSD, but if you wanna get taken seriously in the East and by other teams in this league, sure, go ahead and beat Boston. Yeah, do that, but you can't turn around and then lose to the Indiana Pacers,
Who are 15
15
and
and 40.
40. No, absolutely not. That's terrible. Yeah. Oh, the Knicks. Oh, and also, just as a side note, I don't know who allowed Drewski to start
I
passing
love
people some
Drewski.
balls the other day at the NBA All-Star weekend, but the answer to that is no. He can be there, no problems with that, but passing people balls, absolutely
And it's
not.
not, but you know where he went wrong? And listen up, kids. Two-handed pass, okay? When you throw the ball with one hand, that's exactly what happens. You get embarrassed on national television throwing it into the
You've gotta
4th
have
row.
control. You've gotta have
2
control.
hands, guys.
Yeah,
Chest pass, chest pass. My son's probably tired of hearing me say that. Chest pass.
that was humiliating, and then he was like, my bad," and I'm like, "It was your
We
bad all the
know. We
way."
saw it. Yeah,
No
we
one
saw it,
doubted that
Drewski.
for a second. Also in NBA news, Chris Paul making the decision to retire.
I
Did he?
watched a full career of Chris Paul, 21 seasons in the league. That's no small thing to do. The only person that's more been in the league longer now is Braun, I believe.
Now
But
Bron can retire.
you win the
He's got
longevity
whatever,
award,
that's
Braun.
right.
But what a career for Chris Paul. What a career, and I'm sad that he was never able to win a championship ring, but one thing people can't take away from Chris Paul is that whatever team he went to, he made that team better.
Mhm.
Now, some people may not have liked his attitude or, a lot of the stuff in the locker room, but however Chris Paul acted, that behavior translated to winning for his teams. Okay. 12-time NBA All-Star, made the All NBA team 11 times. And here's what's really impressive. At 6 foot, Chris Paul is not not the tallest player on the court most times. In fact, he's probably one of the shortest players on the court most times, if not the 9 All NBA defensive teams,
Mm.
7 to the first team and 2 to the second team. He's ranked second all time in career assists and steals. That is look, we gotta show some respect to that man. He won Rookie of the Year in 2006. He's part of the NBA 75th anniversary teams. He was part of 2 Olympic gold medal teams. These are first ballot Hall of Fame statistics I'm giving you right now, Ryan. Do you agree with that?
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
a lot of people will take away because he didn't win any championships, but some of these things that I'm reading to you is not everybody is doing this. Not just anybody is doing these things. It's impressive to rank not just second in assists, but also steals. Chris Paul was getting it done at both ends of the court.
I mean, it's a really impressive career. I think that he's certainly done more than most, and on and off the court as well. I mean, I believe was he the, like, president, or I don't know the title for the Players Association? Like, he
I
was.
believe he was the president, yes, at
Yeah.
one point,
So,
if not still.
you're talking about a person who's had a tremendous impact on the league in general, probably in a lot of ways we don't know, a lot of behind the scenes, ways as well. Shout out to Chris Paul. Sometimes I think people, and I think we talked a little bit about this during the Super Bowl run, but there are a lot of people who never make it to the show. Great, great players who never win a championship, don't even make it to a championship run, but they have a severe impact on the game in the most positive way that you can have one, and they deserve flowers when that happens, for sure. So, congratulations on a stellar career, Chris Paul. Ring or no ring.
Absolutely, absolutely.
MLB, baby, we are back. Spring training is currently happening. I am jealous of all of those individuals in warm locations, and I'm really excited to see what we've got going on. But I'm also really mad because Francisco Lindor is going to be out for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Why did we not address this sooner? This
Base
seems baffling to me.
Baseball more than any sport, I feel like, waits until a week before spring training, and then all of a sudden, your players who have had an entire offseason to get these injuries diagnosed. Now we just diagnosed it a week before spring training starts. You had all offseason to get right. You had all offseason to make sure that everything was going okay in your body. I've just lost count how many times people come into spring training. It's like, oh, yep, elbow injury. Oh, yeah, hand injury. And yeah, I might need surgery. It's like, okay, but you stop playing baseball. In this case, in Lindor's case, since September. Why is the surgery just now happening in February, weeks before the season is set to start? Now, good thing for Lindor, he has about 6 weeks in which I believe there's a chance he'll be back to start the season. I think it's unlikely, but even if he does miss the beginning of the season, he probably won't miss too many games, but the fact
Hmm.
that he has to miss games at all is what's very frustrating to me, and I'm not even a Mets fan. Well, so how do you feel about this?
I mean, I'm pissed. I'm pissed.
Rightfully so.
I just don't feel like it starts us off on the best foot. Like, what are we, the Bengals, and our schedule? We're not going to get going until June.
Mhm,
Like,
mhm.
it just doesn't, to me, push us to be in the best position to start. And I think that's the thing that's the most frustrating about it, is that, again, it just feels like we're going to have a sluggish start. We're not prepared. And I think that's the thing that frustrates me the most. Another thing that frustrates me about the Mets, while we're on the Mets, Cohen saying that he does not want to have a team captain while he is the owner of the team. I don't like this man. I don't like him. You know what? And I would respect that decision if you said that you didn't want to name a team captain while you were owner, if you were actually bringing us something to be happy about. You spent all this fucking money. And do we have a World Series? We do not. So I don't understand that when they think like, oh, the team captain doesn't matter. It does matter. Having the leaders in locker rooms matter. It just does. I'm so confused.
I think it does matter, and especially as the Mets are currently constructed, when you have so much talent on that team, egos have to be involved at some point. When you establish a team captain on a team in any sport, that is the guy who makes sure that people's egos are in check. Okay. The Yankees have Aaron Judge in the past. They've had Derek Jeter, a lot of these great captains that we know and we love. And their role was not always, I mean, in Aaron Judge's case, yes, to be the best player. But there were years that Derek Jeter was the captain of the Yankees and he wasn't the best player on the team. In the year that he played alongside Alex Rodriguez, Derek Jeter was not the best player on the Yankees. but he was the captain for a reason because it
Mhm,
was his
mhm.
duty to make sure that behind the scenes, everything was going smoothly. It was his duty to make sure that talents like Alex Rodriguez kept everything in check and brought it all on the field. So I think locker rooms need that type of presence. You have a locker room with guys like Bo Bichette, Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor. You got some big names in that locker room. So I do think you need that person in there to kind of make sure everything's flowing the way that it should, especially just a season removed from rumors that your locker room wasn't all that copacetic last season. Everything wasn't dandelions and sunshine in that locker room, at least from what reports are saying. So maybe this is his attempt to kind of cut down on some of those rumors. Maybe like we do have a tight knit squad. We don't need a captain. I don't know
But
what it
I
is, but
I
I
don't
don't
believe
agree
that
with it.
that's you know what? Here's the thing. This is a perfect example of you are a hedge fund manager who has never played the sport. So,
Mhm,
of course, you don't know what you're talking about because you've never done this. You have never played this sport, which means you do not understand the inner workings of how a team functions and how a captain can lead to making a team amazing. And listen, there
mhm,
are those situations where where you might think that somebody is a leader in the locker room and they're not. Aaron Rodgers is a great example of that. When the Packers won their Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers, the heart of that team was not him. It was Charles Woodson on the defense, who took that team, gave that team hope, really honestly took them to church and just, really orchestrated how a captain should behave and the leadership ability that they have and the way to hype them, the way to get them ready. And when you don't have that in a locker room, it's like everyone's ego for themselves. And, that's just not how I guess I look at that and go, "Did you not play sports ever? Because starting in middle school, high school, you got captains, and
mhm.
sometimes the captain is the best player, and sometimes they're not." Speaking from personal experience, I was the captain of both my field hockey team and my basketball team. Was I the best player on my basketball team? Absolutely not. I was the only senior on the team, so that was how I got that role. So, but I took that role seriously in terms of, I know I'm not the best player on the team, but I can encourage all the players to be at their best. And that's what a team captain does. And for you to kind of say that that tradition doesn't matter, to me, that just shows how much you don't know. And not only do you not know how to win a World Series as a hedge fund manager, like you clearly don't know enough about the sport and you never played it. And it shows. And it shows.
Now the lack of success, let's say the lack of playoff success for the Mets the last few years and then not making the playoffs last year, do you put that more on Steve Cohen, or is that more of a David Stearns issue for you in the way that he used Stephen Cohen's money to construct the team?
I think it's probably a combination, but I think that look, you can have people who come in and own teams, like who buy them, and a lot of them are hedge fund managers, like they just, are part of these like equity firms or whatever, and they buy teams. You can have people who are very passionate about the game and understand the game. I don't know if I don't know who currently owns the Celtics, but in the Bill Simmons documentary that I watched, which you can find on HBO Max, they talk about just more shameless plugs for the Celtics. That hedge fund manager, one of them, does talk about that, and you can sense that he does have a real passion for the team. But I think that, you
I get
know,
that vibe from him, I do.
but I
He
just feel
cares.
like, there doesn't seem to be a lot of heart with the Mets. Like, I think the fans have a lot of heart. They're a very passionate we are a very passionate fan base. And I think the players have heart as well, but I just feel like when you get to the upper stages, every just things just seem so transactional, and it's not about heart. And I think you could see that with, Brandon Nimmo leaving. To me, I just feel like they've made decisions that are just money based, but they're not thinking about
Mhm.
team cohesion. They're not thinking about how do we gel. It's just who's gonna help us get the most money? And to
Well,
me,
then
that's, obviously when you get to this level of sports, money does play a factor. People wanna make money, people wanna like, I get that, and I'm not, naive when it comes to that, but I just think, like, this is another example of I don't feel like you understand the sport, and it just seems too transactional. And when you don't have leaders in the locker room, named leaders in the locker room, it's a problem, in my opinion. So, you know, I just think like that is something like when I read that, I was like, that's such an obnoxious way to think about something. I don't know.
well,
It really rubbed
in
me the
an
wrong
off
way.
season where you lose Nemo,
Mhm.
and an off season where you lose Diaz,
Mhm.
and an off
Alonzo.
season where you lose Alonso, you got Met fans who a lot of these Met fans are attached to these players. You know,
Yeah.
Nemo's not the best at his position, but he means something to the Mets
Yeah.
culture. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So you just let these players walk. It seems like you don't value them in the
Mhm.
same way that, fans value them, and a lot of it is it's business decisions, but how fans care about players should matter.
Yeah.
And fans' investment in players should matter because for the most part, Mets fans wanted Alonso back. So then when you let him
Mhm.
walk and you claim to have all this money, so that just shows us that you just didn't want this
Mhm.
guy. You
Mhm.
wanted to be a Met. So, yeah,
Who
I
had
don't
had
know.
a good season. Like,
He had
and,
a gr he let's be real, he had a great season
yeah.
last season.
Yeah. So I think like that's, I don't know. I owners get flack all the time. Like Jerry Jones, I think, is the owner that probably gets the most flack, and honestly, rightfully so. But, I think that, but I will say this about Jerry Jerry fucking loves football. Like, he loves it. He makes terrible decisions, I think, but he loves football. And you can tell it's his whole life. And I just feel like, you know, this is an example of somebody who I feel like you could sell the team tomorrow and not give a shit. So,
Well, the Mets also went out and back to the Lindor injury, they went out, they improved offensively.
mhm,
They went and get Bichette, that was their big splash in the lineup.
mhm,
They went and they got Simeon. They got Jorge Polanco. I think these bats are better than the players they replaced.
mhm,
So, the Mets might be able to withstand Lindor not being in the lineup to start the season and not have it hurt them as much as if something similar had happened last year. They still have Soto. So,
mhm.
I don't think their offense will hurt too much, but given how last season ended, the Mets were one of the favorites in the National League to at least make a little bit of noise in the playoffs. For them to not make the playoffs after they signed Soto in the offseason, I don't think they can afford a slow start.
No.
Just meant the fan I don't think the fans would be able to take it because the second the Mets get off to a slow
Yeah.
start, it's gonna be, "Here we go again. Here
Well,
we go
and
again." Because
also yeah.
the one thing the Mets can do is start the season really, really well and nosedive, right? Because 'Cause we've seen
Oh,
that
yeah.
happen
Oh,
many
yeah.
times.
Yeah.
But what we're not so sure about is can the Mets have a slow start and then build on that and come back if they dig
Mhm.
themselves a little bit of a hole in the division? Now that we're a little bit less sure of.
Well, to be honest, I don't think anybody in the National League can have a slow start. I mean, I know that statistically that's impossible and that doesn't work, but, like, everybody is going against the Dodgers. Can't have a slow start. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it's based on the division you're in, but
Mhm,
the one good thing about baseball is even as overpowered as the Dodgers are, and we're all picking the Dodgers to three-peat this year, all it takes is a couple bad games to get bounced in the playoffs.
true,
All it
true.
takes is a couple bad starts and a couple of hitters of your best hitters to go cold, and anything can happen. So, I think it'll be more important how about how a lot of these teams finish going into
Mhm.
the playoffs against the Dodgers.
Well, you just gotta think of it like the Olympics. Just listen, you got a finite period of time, let's fucking go, like, let's make it happen.
That's right.
Make it happen. Moving on to fair or foul. No replays, no excuses, just takes. NBA All-Stars, NFL Pro Bowl, MLB All-Stars? Is that what they're called too?
Yep.
NHL All-Star Weekend, Four Nation Face-Off. Do these things matter? Should we keep them in place or just do away with them? I
Uh,
have been contemplating this for the past couple days, and I've decided I don't want them anymore.
In
I think
any
they
sport?
In any sport, I'm tired of it. I liked it in hockey. I felt like there was a lot of passion in hockey, but I feel like okay, here's what I'll say. I think when you have any type of all-star break in the middle of a season, because the NFL is different, they don't do that. I think the difficulty is like people don't want to play their hardest because they still have a season to play. They don't want to get injured because they still have to play. Playoffs are just around the corner for a few, for like the NBA. And it's like, I totally get why you don't want to play your best. So why are we putting All-Star Week in the middle of the season?
I think the difference between, uh, leagues like the NHL, the NBA, and the MLB as opposed to the NFL is the NFL has a lot less games, right?
Mhm.
So, it's a lot and they only play once a week, so it's a lot easier them to just finish their 16 or 18 weeks, excuse me, of football out, and then do their, the Pro Bowl or their version of the All-Star game after the season. But there's just so many I know it's 82 games in basketball, it's 162 in baseball. I wanna say NHL and NBA is somewhat
They have the same amount
comparable.
of games. I think they have
Oh,
the
they
same
have the
amount of
same
games.
amount. Okay, and their season runs pretty concurrently, like, they run at
Mhm.
the same time, the same months. But there's just so many games, so I think the All-Star break is not just for fans, but also as a way to let the players kind of reset as well. Now, the difference I think with the NBA is they also added that in-season tournament, right?
Yes.
So that
That
the intensity on those games has been great, but again, before the championship game, though, these wins actually count towards your record, right? So that matters. And then you have the incentive of money once you actually win that last game, the championship, the championship game of the cup. So that's a little bit different. But I think because they have that, you got to understand only two of those teams obviously will play in that championship game. The other teams get a few days off.
but I
So
feel
maybe they
like
should expound on that and
yeah.
have that kind of be maybe later in the season and incorporate maybe some type of festivities into that. I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
That I think would make more sense to me, but I feel like it's just so clear to me that, like, I feel like these all-star weekends or, like, especially, like, the Pro Bowl, like, they just don't have as much
Mhm.
meaning
I don't even watch
anymore.
that anymore,
Well,
Ryan.
nobody watches the Pro Bowl
I
anymore.
don't turn it on anymore. It's just like flag football now, isn't it?
Yeah. So it
Was it
used to
ever
be
tackle? It used to be.
yes. So it used to be that you would have like, the AFC versus the NFC, and you would play each other in that sense, and so, like, you would for instance, like, there would be a wide receiver who would finally get to play with Peyton Manning, who would never have gotten the chance otherwise, other people.
Mhm.
So, like, you had the chance to do that, but I feel like they were so concerned about injury. I feel like people like, it had just kind of maybe lost its luster, and then it turned into, like, flag football and, can you catch at this radius, or I'm like, it just turned into something that felt silly and unimportant. And I get like the NFL feels the need to have something between the last playoff games and the Super Bowl. Like they want to fill that middle week. But
Right.
it just is like, I just don't see the point to it anymore. And cards on the table, I haven't watched the MLB All Stars in like a very long time. So I don't really even know what that, outside of the home run derby, I don't really know what that consists of. But it just feels like this used to be something that had meaning, or maybe it never did, but I was younger and it felt like it more meaningful. But I just feel like now it just all feels like some weird cash grab that like I'm just not interested in. And I think what made the NHL Four Nation face-offs so intense, well, I think there were a couple things. I think the one thing that made it so intense was there was all this rhetoric about Canada being the 51st state, and Canadians were just, like, irate about it, and so that, I think, fueled a lot of that fire. I mean, I watched Canadians boo the US national anthem. I've never seen that before in my life. Canadians are always so polite, but like there was some real hatred there. So I think that's what made those games so much more interesting, I think, than maybe they would have normally been. So I think there were some outside forces for that, but I just feel like there was so much more passion in what I saw them play than the other sports, but I've cards on the table, I've never watched an NHL All-Star Weekend outside of that. So I don't have a lot to compare that to, so I will be quite honest about that, but it just feels like they've lost. I'm not saying, maybe I'm not saying do away with it altogether, but it has to have more of a purpose.
Well, I will say the one thing you said you're not really that familiar with the MLB All-Star Game. I'm gonna give those guys credit, and you kinda have to because if you think about it like this, right? When it comes to baseball, that's probably the one sport, Ryan, that you can't half-ass. You
Mhm,
can't. You can't fake throwing 95 miles per hour. If you don't throw your arm as hard as that, it's just not gonna be as fast,
mhm,
right? So, there's no faking that. You can't swing less than you normally would, or you wouldn't be able to hit any pitch. So the MLB All-Star games are always competitive.
mhm,
The only time they're not competitive is when the NL talent as opposed to the AL talent or vice versa is just more stacked on one side
mm, mhm,
than the other, and the matchup is just uneven. But as far as the effort that these guys go out there with, I mean, they're giving their all because they have to. That's all they know when it
mm,
comes to
mhm.
baseball. You can't play baseball at half speed. It's impossible. So
Well,
out
yeah,
of all the major sports, baseball, that All-Star game is probably the most similar to what you'd see in a
mhm,
regular game or even a playoff game because those
yeah.
guys are definitely giving their all.
I think it's hard to half-ass hockey as well. Like, I just don't think, like, those at like, I think that that's also difficult to half-ass as well. I think the easiest one to half-ass, as you can see, is the NFL because we
And
just
I've
play
never
flag
watched
football.
and I've never watched NHL or even their version of the All-Star game, but I did see some of the highlights from those 4 nation games, and just you can even tell the
Mhm,
difference in the atmosphere. You can tell the
mhm,
difference in the crowd, the way the crowd is into it,
mhm,
because
mhm.
I was talking about how enjoyable some of those games were last night at the All-Star game, but do you think their crowd looked anything similar to those crowds that were at those 4
Yeah,
nation?
no,
Hell no.
yeah,
It was completely different.
mhm,
So, I think the NBA's and I've always been a big advocate of this, is that crowd means so much
mhm,
how exciting a sport can be. So, if the NBA can figure out a way to make it so that not only the players are invested in these all-star games, but also the fans and make it
mhm.
something important to the fans as well. That'll go a long way to bringing more attention back to these games.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that. I think they just have to figure, and listen, a lot of people said that this last, NBA All-Star game that happened over the weekend was, like, the All-Star weekend was good, that it was one of the better ones that they've had in recent years. So,
Well, the dunk contest was trash. We won't get into that. The dunk contest has been trash for a long time, but
yeah.
that three-point contest was pretty damn good, and
Mhm,
I was kinda on the fence about Damian Lillard participating in it,
mhm.
considering he hasn't touched the floor all season, but he put on a show, and that's really what the All-Star weekend is about, and once
Yeah.
he did what he did, I kind of realized that.
I think, it's just so interesting to watch players kind of, like, not necessarily play their best, I think because they don't wanna be hurt over
Yeah.
something like this
Which we
versus
get,
in
that's a
season.
reasonable
Yeah,
concern.
it
Nobody
is.
nobody is giving
Yeah,
any gripe over
and
that at
that's
all.
why I think having the Pro Bowl kind of at the end of the season, if you're to really, really play a game, isn't a huge problem because 'cause you're going into the off
Mhm,
season. So even if you get
mhm.
hurt, like, you're still, I mean, listen, did I think it was hilarious to watch, you know, Micah Parsons out there on some rascal scooter? Like, yeah, I thought that was funny, but, like, I don't think, like, but that's not what I wanna see in that type of game. Like, I do wanna see a game, I do wanna see you play hard, I do wanna see you give effort. Maybe they just need to restructure it differently so that people have more to gain and people want to show their aggression, I think, more than they do. Because, like, Doncic did, like, fucking nothing. But also, like, he barely played because
He barely played. The
he's
same with
trying not to hurt
Jokic.
himself, like,
Right, yeah.
which I get. Like, so, I'm not, some heartless bitch who, like, wants everybody to just play, play, play. But I agree with your assessment about the cup, though. Like, I think that's weird that they have 2 things in season.
You know what I mean?
I
And
think they
they
should
and
just
they
have 1.
added the cup for some extra, in-season competition. because they felt like the season was a little bit too long. You get to
It is
some
too
of these
long.
later months and, it seems like the competition starts to fade a little bit.
Mhm.
So I thought the implementation of that was good, and it's been good basketball. I believe this was the 3rd year of it, and it's been great basketball. So that was a good choice, but you gotta figure out something to do with the All-Star game, and I think this was a step in the right direction, the
Mhm.
USA and the world teams, because
Yeah.
there definitely was more competition, but again, they gotta clean up the formatting a
Mhm.
little.
Alright. Okay. Look at us, like, semi-agreeing on a fair or foul. Those last 2 weeks have been so intense, I didn't think we'd make it.
Here we are.
Here we are. Alright, moving on to my favorite segment, trash cans. One person's rant about what's bothering them most in sports. Ray, take it away.
So Chris Paul retiring this week, we touched on this earlier in the pod, so that didn't bother me, Ryan. I've never necessarily been a Chris Paul fan per se, but I'm a fan of the game, so I can appreciate what Chris Paul has done for the game of basketball. We touched on it earlier, second all time in assists and steals. That is no small accomplishment. 21-year career. Shout out to Chris Paul because he did some impressive things. Now let's move on to the Los Angeles Clippers. This is a team that their worst crime has been playing in the same city as the Lakers. The Clippers have been terrible pretty much my entire life, with the exception, Ryan, of when Chris Paul played there. Okay, so I pulled up some stats. I'm a big stat guy.
You are.
Love my stats. I decided to go back. I'm not going to say how many years. I'll let our listeners do the math on this, but I decided to go back to the year I was born, Ryan.
Oh god.
1992. 92, okay? I decided to look at the Clippers records since I've been on
Just
this
for
planet.
reference, I was 8.
92, I was just now opening my eyes for the first time, Ryan was 8. So since 92, before Chris Paul got there in 2011, so we're talking 19 years, the Clippers had 3 winning seasons, and I'm gonna use the word winning a little
Loosely.
loosely here, because a couple of those years where they just barely broke 500. But Chris Paul gets there. He gets there in 2011. The Clippers instantly they win 40 games. The next 5 seasons following that, they don't win anything less than 50. Okay, we had the Lob City Clippers. Do you remember that? Chris Paul, Blake Griffin. I know you remember that, Ryan.
I do.
That was a fun time. I don't think
I enjoyed
anybody.
Blake Griffin.
Can you all right, here's a good question for you actually to kind of put this whole Chris Paul thing into perspective. Can you name me yeah, and this is a completely, objective answer, by the way. Can you name me the 2nd best Clippers player after Chris Paul before he got there, right? So let's say the 2nd best after him is Blake Griffin, who he played with him, right? But can you name any other player on the Clippers that was relevant before Chris Paul arrived?
Couldn't not even. Couldn't if my life
Most people
depended on
can't.
it.
Most people can't. Gun to your head, I wouldn't
Gun
be
to my
surprised
head,
if
I'm
in
dead.
a room of 100 people, 90 people could name a former Clipper player before Chris Paul.
Yeah.
So I say this to say he brought them back to relevancy, okay? I believe it was 2019 that the Clippers decided to go and get Kawhi Leonard. Now, do you think that if Kawhi Leonard hadn't seen the success of Chris Paul and the Clippers over the last it was about 8 years before he got there, that he would have signed there? No. The other team that was on the table and many people thought that Kawhi would go to was the Lakers, the other LA team, and he said, "You know what? No. I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna try to keep the Clippers name relevant. I'm gonna try to make this an LA town." You don't do that without Chris Paul going there first, okay? Now we fast forward to this season, December of 2025. What do the Los Angeles Clippers decide to do? They start the season 5-16. Okay, they got off to a terrible start at the beginning of the season. Their big solution was, "Chris Paul, we're gonna send you home." The same Chris Paul who many people, even before he announced his retirement earlier this week, many people believed that this was going to be Chris Paul's final season with the NBA anyway. He just hadn't said it formally. He hadn't said it to the media or anything like that. But a lot of people thought that this might be his last season. So the Clippers on December 3rd, like I said, the Clippers were 5-16 at the time, unceremoniously decide they're going to let Chris Paul know, don't come to work tomorrow. We don't need you here anymore. It's just another one of those examples of franchises. We talked about this on pods in the past, Ryan, just not being able to read the room. This guy is a 21-year NBA veteran. Now, Chris Paul has played for a lot of teams. He's played for the Charlotte Hornets. He's played for, the Clippers, as we touched on. He's played for the Houston Rockets. He's played for the Oklahoma City Thunder. He's played for the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns, who a year before he got there were a terrible team, I might add. And the season that he got there led them to the second best record in the West and brought them to his first NBA Finals. Let's not forget about that. But this same guy, the Clippers decide, you know what, we don't need you around anymore. And you don't do that to somebody with the resume that Chris Paul has. We touched on a lot of his accolades earlier in the episode. This guy is I heard, yesterday actually, it was, on SportsCenter, somebody called him a top 10 point guard in NBA history. Now, I'm not gonna do that to Chris Paul. Chris Paul is a top 5 point guard in NBA history. Some might argue he's top 3 point guard in NBA history. He's second all time in assists, okay? There's only one person ahead of him, and that's John Stockton, who I'm not convinced anybody might ever catch. But Chris Paul has done this, and he's done this well. He's made every single team he's gone to a better team. And you're the Clippers who don't know how to stay out of their way outside of the success that they've had that Chris Paul brought them. This is the same Clippers team. We didn't forget. We didn't forget about Donald Sterling back in 2014. We didn't forget
Mhm.
that that was the owner of the Clippers at one point making these racist remarks. He had to get recorded and exposed for these things to come out. Some of the things that he was saying about the players was disgusting. We remember all these things. It's the same Clippers team that had 3 seasons above 500 in the last 20 years before Chris Paul decided to join y'all. And this is the guy that y'all choose to send home. You signed Kawhi Leonard back in 2019. You decided to add Paul George. You had these big aspirations for what this team was supposed to be. Now, it's not all your fault. Kawhi Leonard couldn't stay on the court. We all know that. He can't stay healthy, can't play games, but he's looking pretty damn good this year. Paul George, also, some injury issues. Him and Kawhi couldn't stay on the court at the same time. But it just seems like the Clippers continue to fumble and fumble and fumble. They couldn't find success when Chris Paul was there. Some of that was his fault, but not all of it. The team wasn't built to win a championship. You also had the Golden State Warriors in the way with KD and Steph and them boys. But after that, they had some years where they could have done something had Kawhi stayed healthy, had Paul George stayed healthy, and you fumbled on that. So then you decide to bring back Chris Paul in the offseason to give him a retirement tour of sorts, again, because he never formally announced that he was retiring this season. And then you start 5-16. And now with some of that locker room stuff with Chris Paul, we don't know. Okay. I will say once the Clippers sent Chris Paul home, the Clippers turned things around. I'm gonna call a spade a spade. They started at 5-16 and then went on to play 15-3 over the next 18 games. So they turned the corner. But you turned the corner for what? You sent Chris Paul home just to do what? Trade James Harden a month later into the season? It just makes no sense. You traded him because you thought, well, maybe he's a toxicity to our locker room. And, this will be enough to get the team where we need to be if we get him out of here. Well, you got the team where it needed to be just for you to turn around and trade the guy that got your team in the spot that they're in right now, which is James Harden. It's hard to understand what the hell the Clippers are doing ever. And the way that they got rid of Chris Paul, for this to be the way he has to retire because the Clippers sent him home, I'm just really, really disappointed. Chris Paul didn't deserve maybe the same type of goodbye that we understand that LeBron James is gonna get. But for someone who played almost as long as LeBron has played, and for someone who has meant so much to the game of basketball, what the Clippers did to him and for him to have to retire in this manner, that's just trash cans, Ryan. I'm very, very upset with it.
Agreed. That organization has been trashed for a very long time. And you know what makes me even more mad? So all that stuff with Sterling is he got to keep money from that sale.
Didn't know that.
Yep.
Makes it even more disgusting. And I will give Steve Ballmer his credit because he had quite the dumpster fire to put out when he bought the Clippers after Donald Sterling was permanently banned, I might add, from the NBA. So I'm actually a fan of Steve Ballmer, to be honest. I like his energy. You see him at almost every Clipper game. He's sitting courtside, pumping his fist. He's extremely invested in that team, and he's an extremely invested owner. And as a fan of a team, if you're a fan of the LA Clippers, that's all you can ask is just an owner that cares, because we see a lot of these professional sports teams with owners that just don't give a shit, and that's not Steve Ballmer. So I'm not gonna accuse Steve Ballmer of not caring about the success of that team. But when you have Lawrence Frank, who and I hate to say this about Lawrence Frank. Lawrence Frank is, I believe he's part of management for the Clippers, and Lawrence Frank used to be, back in the early 2000s, the head coach of my Brooklyn Nets, at the time, the New Jersey Nets, and they found a lot of success with Lawrence Frank. So I like Lawrence Frank, but I don't like Lawrence Frank after what he did to Chris Paul. This entire thing, like I said, it's just trash cans, and you send home a legend like Chris Paul for him to be forced to announce to social media that this is the way he's ending his career. Yeah, I'm just not a fan of it, and I hope this comes back to hurt the Clippers. I hope they don't see any semblance of success the next several years. I hope that continues for them.
My guess is you'll probably get your wish.
Yeah, it's not something I have to wish overtly hard
I don't
for.
think very hard for. So, yeah. All right, well, that's gonna do it for us at the rundown. We'll see you next week.
Holla.